Hi viewers, my name is Ali Ahmed and you're watching nescon.net. In our last lecture, we learned all about MS Access data structure, its data types, and we learned how to create tables and how to modify them. So in our today's lesson, we are going to learn all about what is design view of the table, and we learn all about the field properties in MS Access. Today's lesson is very important because this is the stepping stone of creating a well-designed database. So let's get started.
So Veer, let's begin with our lesson 2. Today we are going to learn all about field properties of data types that are available in MS Access. So in our last lesson, we saw this window while creating a table. Here you can define a field name. A field name is another word for column. So you can define the column name or field name. And then you need to select the proper data type for against each field name. And then you can save the table. But in our last lesson, we didn't talk about field properties. And I told you we are going to have a separate lesson on field properties because they are very important while defining a table, and they have so much usefulness while creating a table, because once you create a table, you want to visualize the table, and if you define these properties in the correct manner, then the visualization of the data will be much easy. So let's have a look again on all the data types that are available in MS Access, which we learned in our last lesson, starting from short text and until calculated, its description and its size. I'm not going to discuss this today again. And for those who have missed my first lesson, please, the link is available in the description and you can learn all about data types from that link. But today what we are going to do is we are going to discuss the field properties of each data type. So in this table here, I have put all the data types that are available in MS Access from our last table. Here I have collected all the properties that can be changed against each data type. So in total, if you see here, there are 21 properties that can be changed for data types. And here we can see that a green tick mark shows us that a particular data type has this property or not. So for example, if you take the example of short text, all these properties are available, which are green. So in total 14 properties that are available for short text, but there are certain properties which are not applicable to this short text, like for example decimal places and show date picker, append only, new values, and so forth, because those properties have no connection to the short text. So if you see here, there are many data types where number of the properties are available depends on its data type. So the least properties that are available are for attachment, just 2, and the most are for short text and long text. So today's lesson is all about these properties. We will go one by one and learn all about the properties starting from caption until result type. So let's start with caption. Caption is the label for the field when used on view. If you do not enter caption, that is that if you do not change this property, the field name is used as label. So like for example here is the, you are defining a table. Here's the field name, let's say test, and its data type short text. When we view this table, the field name for this particular column will appear as test. So like here I view this table and it appears as test. But if, for example, if you want to use another name over here instead of test, then you use caption property to change this field name. This property can be changed for all data types. And this is how it looks like when we see on MS Access, that once you see the property of a particular field, then here is the caption and here is where you can type in. And there are no drop-in options. You just type in whatever you want to name the field apart from the field name which you already defined while defining the table. So let's go to MS Access and let's change and use this caption property. This is the database that we created from our last lesson, Access lesson 1. And if you remember, we created these two tables. So let's go to the design view of this table. You can select anyone. So I am going to select this one. Let's say design view. So if you remember, we defined these field names and then what are their data types. So for example, I want to use this property on this field name, average download speed. So this is a bit long name. So I thought maybe I can name it as ADS. It's, for example, it's abbreviation. So if you want to change the caption, so you already click here, and then if you come down, if you see here, this is where this property is caption. And here, for example, I name it as ADS, average download speed. Then we press save. Okay. And then if you go and press here view, and if you see here the table, instead of average download speed name that we define in the field name, now it appears as ADS. So this is how you can use this caption property to change the field name on the view, not in the definition of the table, but on the view. The next property we are going to learn is text align. This is the alignment of text on table view. What does that mean? So if you see here, once you open a table in MS Access, you can view the data in the form of table. And for example, if you see here, the numbers are aligned on the right side. If you see here, here, and here, and the text is aligned on the left side, here, here, and here. This property will allow you to control this view of data. So for example, if you want it to be in the center, not on the left, then you can use this property to change the alignment of this text. This property can be changed for all data types except attachment, because attachment is not a text. This is how it looks while changing this property. Here it is, text align, and once you click on this drop down button, you can see some options. Here is general, left, center, right, and distribute. What are these options? General is the default setting, which we already discussed. The text on the right or on the left, and the numbers is on the right. But if you want them to change, then you can use left for left alignment, center for center alignment, right for right alignment. And this is a special one, distribute. If you want to utilize all the space and you do not want it to be left or right, but equally used all the space, then you can use the distribute. What does this mean? Then what we can do is we can go to MS Access and let's have a practice on this property. So here we are in MS Access, the database that we created in our last lesson. Let's have a look on the table, how the data is aligned as of now. So if you see here, the numbers are aligned on the right and the text is aligned on the left. So let's take this column as an example, and we try to change this property on this column. We simply right click here and we go to the design view, click on the country name where we want to change the text alignment. And here you see in the end, it is set as text align, and the option is selected is general. This is the default setting. So now let's start with the, for example, center. So you selected the center and then you can press save and view the table. So you see here the Norway, which was basically on the left, now it is in the middle. Let's move it to the right. Okay, column text align, which is center as a selected. So then we go to the right, save, view, and then if you see here, the text is moved to the right hand side. Now let's select this distribute option and how it looked like when we change it. So we select distribute, press save, view. So now if you see here that now the text is aligned from left to right. So we learn how we can use this property to align our text in the view once you want to view the table. The next property we are going to learn is format. The description of format is the display layout of the field. Select predefined format or enter a custom format. What does this mean? Before we understand this, let's see that this property can be changed for all data types except OLE and object and attachment. So you cannot change the format of attachment or OLE object. Apart from these two data types, it is applied on the rest of the data types. This is how the MS Access view look like. So if you see here, format, you can select the format of the field type. What are the options? Every data type has its own format options. For example, number has following options. So for example, if you want a number to be a currency or euro or some fixed number, okay, standard, just like if you want to put a comma inside, percentage or scientific, you can select its format options from the drop down menu. So let's go to MS Access and let's practice it. Let's go to the design view and see where is this property. So if, for example, if I click on average download speed, and if I come here, here it is the property, the format. So for example, what are the options available for this format? As of now, there is no format selected. So whatever you type in, it appears as is. But for example, I want to change it to, for example, let's say currency. So how it will look like once you change it. So your format you selected is currency, and I press save and press view. So now if you see here, a dollar sign is appeared in on the left hand side of the number. Okay, so this is how you can put a dollar sign or a euro sign in the table. Let's change it to something else. For example, I change it to scientific. Press save, view. Okay, so now it will show you in the most scientific manner 1.9 e plus 0.1. So this is how you can change the view of a field, okay, and whatever the format you want. Every data type has its own format. So we were dealing with the numbers, its format. So let's have a quick look on some of them. Like for example, date time. So when you click date time and format is here, if you click here, so now it has its own formats like general date, long date, medium date, and so on. So whatever format you want to select to view in the table, you can select like this. So as a test, for example, I select this one, long date, press save and view. So now if you see here, you can simply like Excel, drag it here a little further. And then now previously you can see that date in a different format. Now it has changed into this format. Okay, let's change it to some other date type, for example this data type. So I select this one, press save, view. So now you see this has changed to this format. And for example, let's have a quick look on another one, like for example yes and no, and check what are the available options. So you have either true, false, yes, no, on and off. So this is all about on format property for data type. Let's move to the next one. The next property we are going to learn is required. It simply required data entry in this field or not. This property is not available for auto number, yes, no, and calculated, because auto number will always appear. Because if you select this data type as auto number, so in sequential order, let's say 1 2 3 4, then it will always appear. You cannot skip this data entry. Yes, no must have either yes or no, and the calculated data type will always calculate something and will put that value into that field. So required is not applicable to these three data types. So here it is in MS Access, required yes or no. So you can select either yes or no. For example, if you select no is by default. If you select yes, then you cannot close the table if you do not put any entry into this particular field. And only two options, yes and no. So let's have a look on this property in MS Access. So let's go to design view of the table, design view, and let's select this field name, command 2. And if you come down here, required, which we are discussing as of now, and the option selected is no. So that means if we leave command 2 empty for a single row, then the access will not create a problem for us, or it will not stop us. But for example, if we change it to yes and press save, then it will ask you data integrity rule has been changed. Existing data may be not be valid for new rules. So for example, if we are going to change this property once the table is already defined, so and if you press yes and there are some empty cells in the table, then it will result in loss of data. So that is why in the start of the video I told you that once you are defining the table, uh, use these properties in the start so that you don't have to change it later while managing the database. So for example, for now I can press yes, okay, and press view. And for example, I create a new entry and I put some comments here, for example, ABC again, okay, and then I press save. So as you can see, it told me that you must enter a value in this table dot command 2. So you must have to enter some value here, otherwise it will not save. So let's say I put XYZ here and then I press save, and now that data or the table will be saved. So this required property will allow you not to have a blank in your table, and if there is a blank, it will not allow you to save the table. Let's move to the next property. This property will help us to speed up the searches and sorting on the field, but may slow updates. So this property is not available for OLE object, attachment, and calculated. This is how this property looks like in MS Access indexed. And then there are three options: no, yes, and yes. Duplicates, okay, duplicates, no duplicates. So these are the options: yes, duplicates, okay, yes, no duplicates, and no. By default, it is selected no. But for example, if you click on yes and select duplicates okay, that means you can allow in a certain column that it can be indexed and there can be duplicates. And the next one is the no duplicates. So if you select yes, no duplicates, then this property will not allow any duplicates in a certain column. So this index property is widely used in order to improve your search speed. Let's have a look on this property in MS Access. So let's go to design view of this table, and let's change this property for this column, country. So if you come here, it is indexed and no, and then you can select, let's say we try with yes, no duplicates. Select this option, press save, we go to view, okay, and here I try to add another one, let's say an O, and we will press save, then it will tell you that the changes you requested to the table were not successful because they would create duplicate value in the index, primary key or relationship. So basically, there are two ways to avoid a duplicate entry in a table. For example, now I'm trying to add another Norway over here, and there should be only one Norway. So either you can use indexing to stop duplicates, or you can use the primary key. Primary key, there will be a separate lesson on primary key. But as of now, we also learn that the indexing can be used to speed up the search. For now, the data is low, so it's already very high speed. So, but this indexing is also allowing us not to have a duplicate value. So let's say I put here TN and I press save, then there is no issue. So let's go to the next property. The next property we are going to learn is default value. The description of default value is a value that is automatically entered in this field for new items. Uh, this property is not available for auto number, OLE object, attachment, and calculated. This is how the MS view look like. If you see here, default value. So either you can type in some value or you can go to expression builder and then you can create some expression so that default value can appear automatically uh, while creating the new record in the table. So there are two options. One option is type in and one option is expression. So let's go to access and try it with some options. Let's open the design view again on this table and let's click this field name. The data type is number, and as you can see here it is our property default value, and by default we have 0 here. So for example, if we do not change anything here and we go to view, so for the new value which is here, for average download speed, remember we changed the caption over here. The default value is already appearing as 0. Let's say that if I want to change this 0 to maybe 100 as a default value, press save and view. So now you see the 100 is appearing automatically. So you don't have to enter anything. This is automatically added to this new row. Okay. So you can create any default value to any uh, any data type and it will appear automatically. So let's say I don't want any default value, so I will just leave it empty, press save and view. So now you can see here this is our field name which we was working on, and you see it has disappeared. So This is all about default value. So let's go to the next property. Now we learn about the property validation rule. The description of validation rule is an expression that limits the value that can be entered into the field. So this is very important property. So for example, you have a column where you do not want some ambiguous value or some very random value. You want it to be a limited value in that particular column. Then you can use this property to create a validation rule. This property is not available for auto number, OLE object, attachment, and calculated. This is how it looks like on MS Access. Here is the validation rule, and you type in the validation rule over here. And the options are only type in. So let's go to MS Access and use this property. Let's go to the design view again. And for every download speed, what we want to do is we want to create a validation rule, which is over here. Okay, and then the validation rule says it, for example, it should be always greater than 0. So this is a validation rule we have created just now for data entries for average download speed. We save it. So it always say when you change some rule, then it always asks you that you want to change the existing data or not. So we will say no. And then press view again. So for example, we change this column average download speed. Okay. And let's say if we want to try to put a less than, or let's say a 0, when you click on 0 or enter the value 0, then it will say that it one or more values are prohibited by the validation rule greater than 0. So this is the validation rule you have already provided in the property. So you will not be able to put any number less than 1. Okay, so let's say I put 1, this will be accepted. I put -1, again it will ask you that you are in violation of the property. So this is a very important property you can use to manage your data. The property we are going to learn now is validation text. This is in connection with validation rule that we have just learned. How is it? Let us see. The description is that the error message that appears when you entered a value prohibited by the validation rule. So before, when we were trying to put 0 or less than 0, we were having a default statement from access saying that you cannot enter, you cannot violate this rule. But this property can help us to put your own text or own warning. Okay. And this property is not available for auto number, OLE object, attachment, and calculated. This is how it looked like, validation text, and you can type in over here. Okay, and the options are type in. So let's go to access and try this property. Let's go to the design view and click on field name. Let's say we select average download speed. This is the rule which we created, and this is the property we are learning as of now, validation text. Before there was a standard validation text from access, but now we will create our own. Let's say we will say you are in violation of validation rule. Please enter greater than 0 value. And we save it, view the table, and here we try to put 0, and it will say what we typed it over there. You are in violation of validation rule. Please enter greater than 0 value. Okay, so this is all about this property. So let's move to the next property. The next property we are going to learn is input mask. This is the most complex property that we have learned so far, or among all 21 properties that we have seen in our previous slides. This is the most complex one and most important one. So let's have a look. So the description says a pattern of all data to be entered in this field. So for now, when you define a column, you do not define any pattern that can be entered into the cells. But for example, if we use this property, you can standardize that input, and only that standard input can be accepted by access. This property is not available for long text because you cannot create an input mask for it, and for auto number, OLE object, hyperlink attachment, and calculated. Access view is like this. This is input mask, and you can here type in your input mask over here. And options are just type in. So you can type in over here. But before going to access and use this property, I want to have a look on this table. So this table shows us some standard characters which are over here, and it has some explanation. So in order to create an input mask, you can only use these characters which are available over here to create a certain input mask. So for example, here are some examples. Okay. So for example, you want to create an input mask like this. Okay. Then you can use this in your access to create this value. What is 0? 0 is from here. It says that user must enter a digit 0 to 9. So when you put a 0, you must enter a value in access, otherwise the access will not save the table. So I will not go one by one and explain it all. Okay, you can read it. It is quite simple. And here are some examples which you can use to learn all about input mask. We will just try one example in Access. So let's go again in Access and use this property. So let's go to the design view of this table. And then, for example, here we can say another field name, telephone number, and we take this as number. Okay, and here in input mask, what we can do is we can say like this: 0 0 0 0 0 dash 0 0 0 0. Okay, so this is the validation rule that we created. We save it, view the table. Okay, and if you see here, you can enter the value like this: 1 2 3 0 1 1 2 3 and 4. Enter. So this is a standard format that you have created by using this property. And as I have shown you in the last slide, you can create any you can create any a standard input by using this input mask, by using the strings that I have write down in the table. So you can go back to the video, and then you can learn all about what characters you can use, which characters are depict what value you can enter, and you can try some examples to create some input masks. Let's go to the next property. The next property we are going to learn is IME mode, that is input method editor. The description says which IME mode you want to set when focus is moved to the field. This property is only available for short text, long text. date time, long date, and hyperlink. This is how the MS view look like, IME mode, and these are the drop down options for this IME mode. And these are more clear options over here. No control, on, off, disable, hiragana, and full width katakana, and so forth. So basically, this input method allows us to enter some Japanese or some Chinese alphabets into the MS Excel. So that is why we do not use this property so much. The next property we are going to learn is decimal places. How many decimal places you need for Access to show us. The description says like this: the number of decimals that are displayed to the right of the decimal separator. This property is only available for number, large number, long date, and currency. The access view is like this: decimal places. By default, it is auto, but you can define how many decimal places you need it. The decimal places can be from 0 up till 15 decimal places you can show in MS Access. The next property we are going to learn is field size. The description says the size and the type of the value to automatically generate for the field. This property is only available for short text, number, and auto number. Here is the MS Access view, okay, and here is the field size. And basically, there are three options for field size. The first option is field size for short text. If you see here, this property is only available for 3 data types. So for short text, you can have values from 0 up till 255. For number, there is a drop box selection, and for auto number, there is a drop box selection. So here is an example for number. So for number, you can select byte, integer, long integer, single, double, replication ID, and decimal. We have already discussed all these in our previous lesson. So let's go to MS Access and use this property. So let's go to the design view again. So if you remember, I just said that it applies to only 3 data types: auto number, short text, and number. So let's say we click on auto number, and if you see here, here is the property field size, and by default it is selected as long integer. So you can change it to either replication ID or long integer. Then for short text, if you remember, the maximum limitation for the short text, the number of characters in one cell is 255, but this can be reduced to either any 15 or maybe 20 or maybe 2, whatever it suits you. So let's say we keep it 255 as of now. And then for number, the field size, okay, it is really important, because the number, you need to define what kind of number it is going to be. Either it is going to be byte or integer, long integer, either single, double, replication ID, or decimal. So we have already discussed these types in our previous lesson. So once you select for a field name, the data type number, make sure that what kind of number you really want to be in this column. If it is an integer only, then you can select simply integer. Or if you are not sure, okay, what number is going to be, it is always says safe to use double, because it has a long range of data. So now let's move to the next property. The next property we are going to learn is allow zero length. The description says allow zero string in the field. This property is only available for short text, long text, and hyperlink. Here is an access view, allow zero length, and by default it's yes. And there are only two options, yes and no. And we always use Yes, there is a hardly any chance where we really need to put no. So we will not go to access and use this property. The next one is Unicode compression. The description is allow Unicode compression for this field. This property is only available for short text, long text, and hyperlink. This is the access view. Unicode compression. Yes and no are the options. So it is by default yes, and it is quite useful because it will compress the text and to save the memory in both RAM and hard drive. So we will not going to use this property so much, so we will not have any demonstration on this property. The next one is append only. Description says that would you like to collect history on this field? This property is only available for long text and hyperlink. Long text property is basically, sorry, not property. The data type is used when we are going to create a huge amount of text into one column. And for example, if someone made a change, we need to have a history that if there is some change that has happened in the long text, because it can contain hundreds of thousands of characters. So this property is quite useful to find out that if there was a change that is been applied to the long text. This is MS Access View, append only by default no, and you can change it to yes. And this long text is normally used when you create a website where you have a lot of text, and this property can help us track any changes. And we are not going to use this property in MS Access as of now as a demonstration. Then the next property is show date picker. Description is the same, show date picker, yes or no. This property is available for date time and long date. And this is the view, show date picker, and by default for dates. And the options are for days, for dates, or never. So let's go to MS Access and use this property. Let's go to the design view again of this table. And we have only one field name which is defined date type as data type as date time. And if you click here, here is the property show date picker, and then it is by default selected as for dates. What does this property do? We press save, press view, and if we go here where the data type is defined as date time, and if we click here, you can have this small option to click where you can select the date. And this is a quite fast way to find your date. For example, if you want to put 5th of April, then simply click 5th of April. So this property allow us to have this button along with this cell. But for example, if we go to again design view, and for change, we change this to never and press save view, and if you click now the option will not appear. So this is a very useful option if you select for dates, but for example if you do not want this to appear in this calendar view, then you can put never. The next property we are going to learn is text format. The description says choose the rich text to store text as HTML and allow rich text formatting. This property is only available for long text. So I already told you earlier that this long text we can save hundreds of thousands of characters up till 2 GB of data. And if we select long text as a data type, then you can always use the rich text formatting, either bold, italic, or underline, and colors even. So in order to use this rich formatting, we can use this property. So here it is, text format by default, plain text. and we have two options, plain text and rich text. And we are not going to use this property. This is self-explanatory. The next property is new values. The description says how new number values are generated for this auto number field. And as description says, this property is only available for auto number data type. This is how it is, new values, and it is always increment as a default value, but we can have two options, increment or random. Let's go to MS Access and use this property. To learn this property, let's create a new table. We go to create, table design, field name ID, data type, auto number, and we use another one. So let's say full name and short text. So if you click auto number here, this is the field property I'm talking about, new values, and by default it is increment. So let's keep it that way as of now and press save and name it as field property test. Don't want to define the primary key as of now. No, the table is saved. Let's close this table and double click. So now what we can do is we put name Ali and again Ahmad. So you see the increment. So first is 1, the second is 2. Now change this property, close this one, go to design view and change it to random. So it will say once you save the changes, the data type of this column, you will not be able to change back the previous data type. Okay, so what we can do is we can say yes. Let's save view. Then let's say we put Norway. So now if you see, this has selected a random value instead of increment, a very random value. Let's say we put another one. Let's say we say Sweden, a very random value, and it can be negative as well. But I would always suggest to use increment instead of random. So let's move to the next property. The next property we are going to learn is expression. The description says the result of this calculation will be stored in the calculated column. The data type that use expression as property is only calculated. In Access, this looks like this expression, and you can click here to create an expression. And options is only the expression builder. So let's go to Access and use this property. So let's go to the design view. And here I want to use this property, but first we need to have another field name called sum of speed. So let's say I want to add this and this. So I name it as sum of speed and I use calculated as my data type. So it already opened me an expression builder over here. And in expression builder, you can see we have from on the left, we have table, we have functions, and here are the expression categories. Every download speed, every upload speed, whatever we have over here, it is visible over here. So let's say I want to add these two. So you can, let's say, double click here. It will appear here. I will simply say plus and then average upload speed. So I have created this expression to add up these two values, and then I press OK. So if you see here in expression, which the property we are learning, this has automatically appeared like this. And then we save this table and view. As of now, there are no values. So let's say we put name. We fill all the columns. So let's say Norway and quarter 1, 1019. Average download speed is 23.1. It's an example. Then 10.2. So if you see here, automatically the summation appears 33.3. So basically summation of this and this. Let's go back to the design view. Click here, and in expression, I just want to take the average of it. So what I can do, I simply place brackets over here and then divided by 2. This is the average. You press save and press view. So now I have an average speed, but the column name is not changed. So I go to design view and I go to caption and I can say average speed. This property we already learned, caption, average speed, save, view. So now you see average speed, and this is 16.65. So this data type and this expression builder is quite useful. For example, if you have a table and you want to create an extra column by adding, subtracting, or applying any mathematical formula on two or more than two, one, two, or more than two columns, then you can use this expression builder and this data type calculated. Okay, so let's move to the next property. The last property we are going to learn today is result type. The description says the result of the calculation will be displayed as this data type, and this property is only available for calculated. So we already learned the expression we build. Let's say, for example, you are adding two numbers and the resulting number is integer, then the result type will be integer. But for example, if we take the average, it can be a decimal number, then the result type can be a double. So what are the options available? So the options available are double, integer, long integer, single, decimal, short text, datetime. All the data types that are available can be selected in the result type. So let's go to MS Access and use this property. Let's go to design view again. We already created this field, sum of speed calculated, and we take the average of it. So let's say we keep it as summation, and we remove this caption, and here is the property result type. So it is selected as double, but let's say I select this as integer and I press save and view. So now if you see here, although we have 23.1 here and 10.2 here, but here I can only see 33 because integer will not show any decimal number. So when you create this column and data type is calculated, make sure that the result type is precise according to what kind of numbers you are going to have in that particular column. So that is all about the field properties of all the data types.
So viewers, to summarize, today we learn all about what is design view of the tables, how we can modify a table using the field properties, and using those field properties, how we can create a table and thus create a well-structured database. In our next lesson, we are again going to learn about the tables, because this is the most stepping stone of creating a very powerful database. So in our next lesson, we are going to learn about how we can link the data from the external sources. So stay tuned and keep watching, and please do like, subscribe and share. Thank you very much. Stay tuned.